What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Hard Truth. And it's that hard truth that we're going to make you hear that the successful have already accepted. We want to make sure you learn it and accept it too as you go forth through life, living head down, horns up. And, I've had some awesome members from Soldier Fit and The Herd on the program. A lot of you guys have probably just heard Mike Luttrell. His podcast actually released this morning. The founder of X3 Sports out of Atlanta, and just a big fan of him. But I'm gonna be honest, man, this is like a drum roll moment. Arguably, and I'll put it on there. I don't care. It's my show. I can say whatever I want to say, and they'll fact check me anyway. The clothing brand of the decade, and also, might I add, the best office in all of officedom. I am so pumped to have Joey here, co-founder of one of my favorite clothing brands on earth, Few Will Hunt. Welcome, Joey. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to jump in on the show. And listen, we're going to go into your history. We're going to go into the motto of a Few Will Hunt. But I remember setting out in California talking to Bedros and just laminating about your office. The backdrop, that is not a digitally created backdrop. You have one of the best, coolest offices. So you got to give me the story about that.
Yeah. So fun fact first, in 2017, our first photo shoot for Few Will Hunt was actually here. We knew a photographer that had a small studio here, and we brought like our very first 2 tees here to have them shot. Then fast forward, I guess, 5 years, we outgrew Drew's basement, my partner. We outgrew a small, really garage that we had outside the city of Philadelphia. And we were looking for like an HQ, and we're looking around, and like a sanitized, like white walls, new construction HQ just isn't us. Like, how we rock at Few Will Hunt, we're gritty. We have a lot of gumption, so we needed something with a lot of character. And I happened to be just cruising Craigslist, believe it or not. And the third floor of this building was on Craigslist. So the building itself is part of a collection of buildings called Globe Dye Works. And it's actually, fittingly, it's an old textile dyeing and spooling facility. So they would dye and spool yarn here. This building was built in the early 1900s, but most of the buildings date back to late 1800s. So it's a fitting place in many ways for us. We call it the House of Hard Work. There's hard work done here for over a century, well over a century. And when we came up to this third floor, the floors were stained with grease and oil from all the heavy machinery. Like, you could just feel the work that was done here. And we were like, this is it. We have vaulted ceilings, the trusses. It's just beautiful. If I wasn't on the laptop, I'd spin you around so that you could see everything. But we've got a little gym in here, obviously the hub of our operations and office. It's a nice space, man. It's a nice space.
So they actually sold the floor.
Yes. Yeah.
I never knew that was even a possibility.
I told them that we'd be back for the whole building within 3 years. So we'll see.
That's awesome, man. That is like the perfect story. That's the perfect segue.
Amazing.
Listen, if someone has been living under a rock and they don't watch any type of Instagram, any type of media, or if they're just absolutely lazy sacks of shit, which are probably not listening to this anywhere. Maybe they're trying to transform and leave that mentality, and they're looking to try to figure out how to toughen up. Tell the people about what is Few Will Hunt. What is the genesis of it? Where did it come from? And why do you think it's taken off and resonated so much with Americans?
Sure. So first and foremost, Few Will Hunt is a couple things, but the first thing that we are is a community. We've been a community since day one. Community and a counter movement. And you kind of hit on that a little bit, a counter movement against some of the ills in society right now. And then third, really, I consider us like a clothing company. So it's community, counter movement, clothing company. We're kind of multifaceted. So if I rewind all the way back to 2017, I was a full-time employee in the technology industry. That's my background. So I used to build websites and software for Fortune 500 businesses. My cousin Drew, 10 years younger than me, He's in the apparel space, like promotional marketing. He has some experience with garments and producing garments. And we used to talk every day on the way home from our offices, right? And Drew was just coming up. He wanted to start a business. I had this Fuel Hunt is my first business. I had a business previously, so we used to talk about entrepreneurship, about life, and we used to lament a bit about the ills of society, what we were seeing in society, victim mentalities, shortcut seeking, looking for the secret, the hack, right? Entitlement, you name it, right? Unfortunately, the list of ills is probably as long as my arm at this point. But we used to lament about that because we felt lonely. We're both from blue collar, hardworking families. We know about the power of hard work. We had applied it to our lives to be achievers, high achievers in the industries that we were in. And man, we looked around and we were like, are there any people like us anymore? Anybody that believes in the power of hard work to transform their lives and build a life that they dream of for those that they love? So in that moment, I said something that I say at my cabin. I'm a bow hunter. You're a hunter too, right? So at my cabin, I used to say, everybody wants to eat, but few will hunt. And it was a statement that we would use, my family, my father, my uncles, and I, to celebrate the hunt, the self reliance, right? The giving that's involved before the taking, right? In the field, all of those things. And when I said that, it's the first time I ever said it to Drew, he was like, wait a second, what was that? I repeated it, and he's like, we have to put that on a shirt, right? So we're driving through the mean streets of Philly at this point. I race home, I get home, I pull up like, as embarrassing as it is, like Microsoft Word, I pick a font, I like type this thing out, the mantra, I send it over to Drew. Drew digitizes it, he gets it on a shirt. We print like 12 or 24 shirts. We hand them out to our friends. And we say, hey, look, we're building the world's largest community of hard workers, people that believe in the power of hard work. You're getting one of these shirts because we know you're one of us. You're one of the few. And people were like, that's intense, but I get down with that. Like, I can get down with that. And that was the genesis of the entire thing. And for like 2 years, all we did was look for our people and put content out there, mainly in the form of blog posts that I was writing. We didn't even focus on the apparel. And then after those 2 years of community building, we had a few thousand people in the community. They started asking for apparel. And that's really how the clothing company of the community encounter movement and clothing company spun up. But it was never about clothing in the beginning. It was always about community, and still is to this day.
I want to ask you a question, and honestly, like I've thought about this question for you, honestly, off and on since I've followed you on social media, seen things that you do, and I want to preface this by saying that part of the reason why I think we've gotten to where we've got in this country is people will look at that building that you're in, right? And they'll look at when you got there, all the all the oil, all the grease on the floor. And then they'll look at something else that you take a great deal of pride in. You say, we came from blue collar, hardworking families. And I think the start or the selling point of this new life where we want it easier, we want more, is almost kind of like the argument for communism, right? It's like, well, the worker does all the work, but they don't get any of the fruit of the labor. They don't get any of the rewards. And a lot of people that are come from blue collar families, like you'll talk to them. I came from one. The father or the mother, they busted their ass. They worked hard, but they never really made the limelight. They didn't make the $1,000,000. They didn't become the Instagram influencer celebrity. And so the argument is, what is the power of hard work if doing all of that hard work day in and day out doesn't give you what society says is awesome? Those big accolades, the front page of the newspaper. How do we sell what we believe in to the younger generation who, when you ask them what they want to be, I want to be an influencer, right? How do you approach that?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because I came from the same upbringing. Like my parents worked multiple jobs, right? And they're not millionaires. Like we had very little growing up. So I think that it's not the power of hard work. That's kind of like or hard work is an umbrella, right? And beneath that, there's other things that also need to be done. Now they require hard work, but there's other things that need to be done. Risk, sacrifice. There's other things. And that's why we put together the rules of the few. We didn't come out and just say, hey, look, like trust hard work and everything's going to be okay. No, we came out and we said, look, hard work's the vehicle, but you're going to have to drive it through pain, risk, sacrifice, fear. There are other things that must be done if you want to achieve, more. You're going to need to demand more of yourself if you want to achieve those things. And nowadays I think that there's a problem with context, especially with social media. Everybody wants things in 3 seconds. You know, I'll spit a sentence out like one of the rules of the few: prefer pain, and immediately everybody has an adverse reaction to it without stopping and saying, wait a second, well, let me learn a little more so that I can think about this and how what it means and how it would apply it to my life. So an issue with context. There's a lack of context. So it's really easy to say I want to be an influencer, or I want this, or I want that, but we've lost the ability to go deep. We've lost that ability to think and go deep. And that's, I think, where a lot of the problems arise, because then people don't start believing in themselves. They hear 1 3-second clip on social and they're like, okay, well, I should be a millionaire. I'll apply this for a week, for 7 days straight, and then I'm a millionaire. It's like, no. There's so much more nuance involved.
Well, I think one of the things that you said that I talk to people about all the time, and I absolutely, I think this is part of the problem with the belief that I get it in 3 seconds. I always say 99.9% of all humans that are adults or even early teenagers have worked out hard once. In many cases, that's why they didn't work out hard twice, right? They felt that pain. But hard work, I told this to my team the other day, no one compensates you for hard work. Like if I told you, for example, the way I use this, like if your job is to sell gym memberships and you went outside and you held a sledgehammer and you swung that sledgehammer for 12 hours and you knocked the big hole in the wall, you may have worked hard, you may have been busy, but no one gives a shit because it wasn't what you were getting paid to do. Sure. I think a lot of people think that the only way that you can screw up is if I don't do anything and I'm being lazy. But no, you could be working hard 100% on the wrong thing. Your ego could be so big that you won't walk away from it because it's not going in the direction that you want to. So the way I kind of look at it is hard work is important to be taught at a young age, because hard work, you use umbrella, I use foundation, right? Like you've got to be able to put in the efforts, the toil, the hours, the time behind the limelight where no one's cheering you on. And that's the foundation where now you've got to make good decisions on top of that foundation, right? So one of our rules in the Herd Truth, and I'd love to hear about how this played in your life because I know it has, right? We'll jump right to the 10th rule. The final rule is FIFO, figure it the fuck out. So how in your life with Few, with Hunt, and again, there's so many people, and I want to focus on this. You guys are, when I say a dime a dozen, everybody's riding home after work, bitching about work, bitching about society. This sucks, this sucks, this sucks. But they never take a step and actually offer up a solution. Along the line of figuring it the fuck out, why do you think you guys did what 90% of people don't do, which is actually take the next step? And then what have you done that the other 9%, because there's only 1% that pulls off the success, right? Yeah. What do you think that the other 9% that actually tried to take a step, what do you think they're missing?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I agree. Like hard work is definitely a foundation, like you were saying. In my life, when it comes to figure the fuck out, which is a big rule for me too, it didn't make the rules of the few verbatim. It's in there, but it didn't make the rules of the few verbatim. I've always been a problem solver, always, since I was a kid. Like if I rewind all the way back to, when I was riding my bike around Philly and I didn't want to get my shit stolen. Like I didn't want to get my bike stolen, right? Because that's what happened if you were, you know, I was weaker, man. I was weaker. I was softer when I was a kid. I wasn't the man that I am now. Like if I didn't want my shit stolen, I had to figure out a fucking solution to that. I had to take another way home, or I had to learn how to throw hands, right? Or I had to pick up enough speed to blaze by the people that were going to steal the bike. Like for me, it started at a very young age. Then when I moved it to high school and I started getting involved with computers and technology and I enjoyed that, I was like, man, I want to go to school for this, but like we don't have the money for me to go to college. So now I need to figure that the fuck out. Now how do I do that? Okay, well, I need to rely on the hard work, the foundation that my parents instilled in me to get good grades in school so I can get a scholarship to school. So I can go there and pursue, technology and the things I wanted to do. Then when I got to college, I was like, hey, look, I want to get out of this motherfucker. Like I didn't, dude, it just wasn't the place for me. I started college early. I started, again, because of the foundation of hard work and my ability to figure it the fuck out. I figured a way out to start going to college when I was a senior in high school. So I had to jump on everybody because I wasn't even in there yet and I wanted out of there. You know what I mean? So 2 years in, I'm like, man, I got to figure this fuck out. Like, this isn't for me. This classroom stuff, I need to be out in the working world. I know what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. So again, I had to figure it out. I had to go to my teachers and say, hey, look, what classes can I test out of? Can I graduate early? Because I knew there was a job waiting for me that I wanted to, I wanted to succeed in. I wanted to give back to my family, all the sacrifices they made to get me to where I was. I had to figure that out. And then that birthed my first business. I was like, okay. I went out, I was in the working world for a little while, and I'm like, man, like these dudes are doing really well on my back. No disrespect, but like I'm here putting in 80, 90-hour weeks, right? And these guys that own these agencies are doing really well for themselves. Private jets, flying to France whenever they want for the weekend. You know what I mean? I'm like, why can't I do that? So again, I had to figure it the fuck out. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do what they did. I'm going to start a business. Started my first business. That went well, Then the figure it the fuck out really started to, I started to hone in on my purpose with figure it the fuck out, right? I had some success in technology and I was like, but what? But what now? Like, what is my purpose? What have I done over my entire career as a student, as a developer, as an architect? And I'm like, man, I've done hard things. And I took on insane timelines when I was employed to build software. Everybody else said couldn't be done in a year. My team and we built that shit in 3 months. You know what I mean? Like I've done hard things over and over again. So I'm like, man, that really instilled my worth. My hard work instilled my worth. So I think it's time for me to help other people do hard things. And then the road signs were there for Fuel Will Hunt and building a community of hard workers or people that aspire to be hard workers. But I didn't really start following them until that moment that I described with Drew. Then I was like, you know what? Now it's time to figure something else out. It's time to figure out how to build the world's largest community of hard workers, not so we can just strengthen ourselves, but strengthen society because of all these ills, that we were seeing. And to answer your second question about like what have I done that the other 9% haven't done, honestly, it's just I haven't quit. No matter like how dark it's gotten, how difficult it's gotten, because it is dark and difficult. You're an entrepreneur, you understand. I just haven't quit.
Alex Hormozy, who honestly, when he first, I don't know if you follow him or not, but when he first came onto the industry, he came onto the scene when he had the book Gyms Are Dead, and I'm thinking to myself like, this fucking clown, right? Like, here's another fear mongerer, right?
Yep.
And I was like, our gyms are doing great. There's nothing wrong. And then COVID happened, and honestly, I've learned so much from Alex, and we've applied so much in there. And it really opened my eyes. And it's funny because it kind of leads into rule 6, everything that you just said. And a lot of people don't know how to take this rule. And most people, it's like you say, if I send this text out, endure the pain, everybody's like, 3 seconds later, I got this fucking adverse reaction. We're not stepping to think back, right? And so for me, That rule is 6, is that problems are permanent. Mm-hmm. Like there is no, and I think it's the biggest mistake, and kind of where I was going with what Alex said. Alex says that in all the games that matter in life, the point isn't to win. The point is to keep playing the game, right? And a lot of times in business, when you go through that dark point, like the point actually isn't even at that point, in that moment in time to make a lot of money. It's like, fuck, can I pay the bills next month? Just get through next month and we'll figure it out after that. So when you see the problems are permanent, what I meant by that is like, listen, like there's never a stage in life where you're going to get to there's some fucking utopia where the problems don't exist. And everybody you see on social media who you think is killing it, right? I'm a big fan of the success you had, but I guarantee you money, probably before this call and maybe after this call, you got this level of problems that you were dealing with that are completely different than the ride home problems you started with. So how do you navigate that? How do you stay motivated knowing that the problem is permanent?
Yeah, I love that herd truth. I absolutely love it. Drew and I just did a show, the Fuel Hunt show, and it was the truth about entrepreneurism or entrepreneurship. And the number one truth that I said is entrepreneurship is not a solution. It's a fucking problem. And it's the biggest problem that you will ever invite into your life. And it is the hardest problem you will ever invite into your life. And it is the most permanent problem you will ever invite into your life if you're doing it right. Because I really believe that success is a sliding scale, right? So like in entrepreneurship, you're right. The problems that I drive in with are ultimately compounded by more problems when I drive home, but they get solved. And then over time, different problems arise. It's a sliding scale. You succeed, you overcome those problems, and then bigger, better problems present themselves that open doors to bigger, better purpose and impact. And as far as how I stay motivated through that roller coaster, there's two things. I have an expectation that every day is going to be hard, that there's no easy days, and if there's a day where for some reason I just slam dunk the shit out of all my problems, I'm pleasantly surprised. But I come into every day thinking every day is going to be hard, mainly because I set up obstacles for myself to be difficult, intentionally. But that expectation of every day is going to be hard helps me. And the second thing is, I have a non-negotiable process. So I am fully aware that I will not solve all the problems in one day. I do not expect to solve all the problems in one day. What I expect is the day will be hard and I will complete what I've set forth to complete that day. And doing that gives me the, dare I say, comfort, the trust that the best is yet to come and everything's going to be okay, that the problems will be solved, So it's really those two things. I expect every day to be hard. And then I make sure that I do literally everything I can do in a given day. And that gives me the trust and that gives me the comfort that I need to have a positive outlook that the best is yet to come.
You said something earlier, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. One of my most hated quotes, and I'm a big quote guy. I love quotes. But one of my most hated quotes is, if you don't build your dreams or chase your dreams, somebody else will pay you to build or chase theirs. Yep. And you said something along the lines, you were actually super respectful about it. You're like, I noticed that the people that owned the company were making money off my hard work. There's a great book out there called The E-Myth. And I think the E-Myth touches on this. They call them, I think, widget makers. I like the term artist. There's a lot of people that are great painters that should never go into business because all they want to do is paint. And they don't want to deal with the marketing of it. They don't want to deal with, selling their artwork. They don't want to deal with delivering and all of this stuff. For people that are out there, and I don't think there's necessarily nothing wrong with, you sit back and you're like looking at, you see the owners, and again, you see the surface level and you think all of the stuff they have. But there are some people who should take that leap and go do their own thing. And there are some people that should say, hey, like, listen, I really enjoy
Yeah.
painting my picture. And that's really what I want to do. But there's this call in society that you got to be the CEO, or that the only person that matters is the person who owns it. You know,
Yeah.
what advice do you give people that are struggling with that internally?
I agree with you on that quote. Like, I can't stand it. And it's one of those things that, again, the context is missing. Like, I think that most solutions are in the gray. Like, I'm not a black or white guy, right? Like, I'm usually in the gray. That's where most solutions are found, in my opinion. And that quote, it's like black or white. It's like, well, you're either going to be, a widget maker, or you're going to be like killing it. And all that context of like, well, what do you want out of life personally? Like, what lights you up? That's all missing from that, you know? So for somebody that's um, maybe, employed or doesn't know, I guess, your question is like, how does somebody know if they should take the leap, right, into maybe entrepreneurship
Yeah.
or just stay an entrepreneur? I would say ask yourself the question, how much do you love problems? That's literally what I say. Like, if you are a natural, well, if you are a nurtured or natural problem solver and you get a rush from solving problems, specifically problems that help serve other people, then you should be an entrepreneur. You should take that skill and that craft you have and dip your toe, really dive in fully into the waters of entrepreneurship, and and see if it's for you. I used to convince or attempt to convince everybody I met back in the day that they should own a business. Now I realize that it is only for a select few, and you got to be a little crazy, man. You do, to a certain degree, and you have to love problems. Love problems.
I think you also have to accept the fact, and you may completely disagree with me on this. I think we're both lucky in that we have business partners. I've watched a lot of people that has just fallen apart for them. But even with business partners, my experience and my experience with other entrepreneurs is it's lonely as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking for somebody to, if you're looking to be able to like vent, and because the truth is, especially like if you're an entrepreneur, like unless you have this type of relationship where you can call on somebody that's in a similar role, who are you going to bitch to? Your employees?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Bring it home to your spouse and then stress them the fuck out? So have you experienced that type of loneliness with it, or is that different for you?
Oh yeah, no, I have. I think that the hardest work that you do, even outside of entrepreneurship, I think the hardest work that you ever do is done alone. It's done on self. And a friend of mine, you may know him, Nick. He spoke at BK Live. Nick Long. He always says it's not the business plan, it's the businessman.
Yeah, that
Right?
dude was good. That
Yeah,
dude was
yeah.
solid. He was solid.
Nick is the man, and there's so much truth in that because at the end of the day, with entrepreneurship, many of the breakthroughs that you need to overcome your obstacles start with self. It's the hard work done on self, and the hard work done on self is always lonely. And that's one of the reasons we started the community fuel hunt, right? Because we realized how hard work is extremely lonely and can be dark at sometimes. The only thing that makes it better is when you're surrounding yourself with people that are doing that exact same work. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, in my experience, it's been very dark. It's been lonely. At times, it's most of the time, I would say, and then there's a lot of bright moments. You
Yeah.
know, B breaks it down, nicely. I'm probably going to butcher the percentages, but he says like 85% of the time with entrepreneurship, it's like you're treading water, you know, and then there's like 14% of the time where you're like, fuck, this isn't going to work, DEFCON 1. And then there's 1% of the time where you're like,
Yes.
I got this. I'm the man. Like, I'm killing this shit. And the that 1% of the time, it's bright, and there's a lot of people around. They're clapping. They're patting you on the back. They're saying, "Wow, you've done something that's great that I aspire to do." But The other percentages, the 85 and the 14, or it's dark. It's dark.
What's funny about it is, especially with that analogy, and, go ahead and steal this and start using this and make it your own, right? Like, it's like hunting.
Yeah.
I was telling, I'm trying to get my girlfriend her first deer, and kudos to her, man. She was sitting in the rain last night, waiting for one to come in. We didn't get the luck, but you spend, and I remember having this conversation with myself as a business owner, like earlier in the year, I literally sat in a blind or a stand for 40 fucking hours and didn't see anything.
Yeah.
Right. Or you see like the most beautiful buck you've ever seen in your life. And this motherfucker sets, you're bow hunting. They're setting 150 yards out like he's watching Netflix, and you can't get him to come in. Right. And you're sitting down there all these hours. You're in there early. You're freezing your nuts off. And you're just like this, like this, like this. And it's hours and hours of nothing happened. Nothing happens. And you're like, how can I take this time away from work? This is stupid. And then all of a sudden, I call them like the ghost of the woods. They just fucking materialize in front of you. And you're like, where did you come from?
Quiet. It just
quiet.
Nowhere. Yep.
And what's crazy about it is when I got into hunting, I never thought, I was like, listen, I fought in a cage. I was a firefighter. I fought fires. I've been in gunfights. There's no way I'm going to get nerves. And then they're there and you go to draw and you're like, you can't stop shaking. And it's the wildest shit, but it's that 1%, that 1% of the time that you fucking live for it, man. Like once you taste it, and then like as soon as you kill him, you're like, oh my God, is the season done? Is there nothing else I can do? It's very similar to that.
It is very, very, very similar. We have a percentage of our community that are literal hunters, right? Everybody's a metaphorical hunter, obviously, but literal hunters. We haven't done a great job of really making that connection between like the physical hunt and the metaphorical hunt. It's something that we plan to do.
Yes, I sent you a message like, do this. Yes,
even more gear, actually, hunting gear. We're playing with, but it is so true. Even this season, the past couple of seasons, I haven't made as much time to hunt, to bow hunt as I would have liked because I had other priorities, with my girls and with Fuel Hunt. But I went out twice this season. I think we talked about it.
Yeah.
I went out twice. Second time I was out, missed a big 8. It was that 1%. Ghost came out, and it's during the rut, nose on the ground, jazzing, and then all of a sudden just stops behind a tree, just like stops. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I had the same thoughts. I'm like, man, I took this time away from my girls, from my daughters, my wife. I took this time, away from Fuel Hunt. I'm in this tree. I had too much coffee. I got to piss. I'm feeling my nuts off, but you live for that 1%. You really do. You live for the 1%. And being in the tree stand and alone in your thoughts and everything, it's a very, very good analogy for the road.
Well, the one thing I'll tell you that I made the decision this year is I spent so much of my time never doing anything for myself, never taking like a vacation side. And I always tell folks I'm like the most extroverted introvert you'll ever meet. Like I like to go to seminars. I very much enjoy doing things like podcasts and being on stage, and I enjoy helping and coaching people. But after work, leave me the fuck alone. I don't want like nobody around me. I like need my space and the whole 9 yards. So, I was like, man, I've got to actually, because, for me, one of the things I want to do is a big elk hunt. And, I realized I got into hunting late, like elk hunting is serious. Like it's a lot of work. And so you don't know what that window ahead of you looks like. And so for me, it's like, this is one of the things that I personally made myself is saying, hey, listen, I'm going to make time. Making time for me is just as important as making time for everyone else, and forcing that to happen and not feeling guilty about it. Because I think that's the biggest problem as an entrepreneur. You sit back and you start to feel guilty about it.
Yeah. I think we both, I even just said it, I'm like, shit, I took this time away from, Fuel Hunt. I took it away from, my girls for no yield, didn't fill the freezer. But there's one thing that we say around the community is you can't pour from an empty cup. And when you're in a service position, right, like we are, that's what we are. We're
Yeah.
servants. When we're in a servant position as a servant leader, you need to fill your cup. And I until maybe the past year or so, 2 years, I've done a terrible job of it too. Like I never stopped to fill my cup, and I can't pour from it. I can't pour into other people if my shit is bone dry all the time. So I need to do those things. I need to get on the mats. I need to go to my cabin. Those are really the two things. Like
Oh,
I
that's a dream. You have a cabin?
I do, yeah, in
Ah,
Australia.
that's like
Yeah,
that's literally like when I'm manifesting every day. We'll have a cabin with my own land and more money than I can spend.
yeah,
That's like the retirement. That's awesome, man.
I do. Yeah, I have it. We and talk about risks. I mean, that was a big risk. I wasn't, my wife and I, we weren't married yet. We were living together. We had been together maybe for like a year or something. Didn't have a house yet. We were in an apartment. Um, didn't This was pre-fuel hunt. And my dad called me one day and he was like, "Hey man," he's like, "that cabin, it's a pine tongue and groove cabin. It's beautiful." He's like, "That cabin up the road on the mountain is for sale." He's like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "Fucking let's do it." You know what I mean? Barely had a
Yeah.
pot to piss in. And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." So it was a big risk, but it worked out. But yeah, I need to get on the mats. I need to get to my cabin. I need to fill the cup because I can't pour from it otherwise. I can't be my best self for everybody and help them be their best, if I'm depleted constantly.
And listen, if you guys just go ahead, because I told you, I literally wrote you, right? This isn't just a fan moment. I literally wrote you like, dog, start a hunting clothing line
Yeah.
because it just goes right with it, especially when I saw you in there. And so now you can just segue that in. I need to create content for the hunting clothing line, and I
Yeah.
can't do that unless I'm hunting.
There you
So
go.
I get both sides of it. That's a tax write off now.
There you go. There it is. There it is. Yeah.
Um,
I see new tree stand, new bow. I see everything coming in.
100%. Yeah. We're gonna work a deal with Matthews and it's
Yeah.
and meet mega meat broadheads. It's gonna be great. It's gonna
There you
kill
go.
it.
There you go. Yeah.
So,
So I'm with you, man. I'm with you. You got to take time for yourself.
one thing that you talked about earlier, and actually really leads, and I'd already planned on talking to you about this because I've seen your story on Instagram. But the first rule of the herd truth is that developing the body develops the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen your before and after transformations. I wasn't expecting what you said earlier about like, listen, man, I was like a weak kid. I had to figure just stuff. I'm not the man I am now. So take us through that transformation. Like, what prompted you to actually start getting in shape? And then what said, hey, well, let me actually get on the mats and let me get ripped and let me be jacked. I mean, what led all of that?
So I wasn't, I was a soft kid, right? My parents, they knew that. I was more cerebral than I was. Like I had played sports, but I wasn't terribly good at any of them, right? I was really cerebral as a kid. I was more of an artist and like a creator than I was like a conqueror. So, I got picked on, I got beat up, I got my ass kicked more than I kicked ass, growing up as a kid. My mind going to getting jacked and my bike stolen is not a coincidence. When we talked about it earlier, because like the shit happened when I was a kid, and it was rough. Like the neighborhoods in Philly I grew up in, like there was no love, man. Like the older kids, they smell it on you, man. They smell it on you if you're, not able to stand up for yourself. You know what I mean, and handle your own. So, my parents bought me my first uh, weight set. I think maybe I was 11 years old or so, 12 years old. It got it for me later because there was this whole thing about stunting your growth. I don't know if that's still a thing, but so I started lifting a little bit when I was younger, and then I got into endurance sports. So I was like running. I was doing like 60, 70 mile bike rides, things like that. And I was working hard. I was always a hard worker, but I was working hard on like the business aspect, and I was using that as an excuse to escape the body aspect, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was never in terrible shape. I mean, you saw my before picture. They were from my powerlifting days. I powerlifted for a bit. And even then, like I used it as an excuse. Like I'd go to the office all day. I'd fucking kill it for 12, 14 hours. Then I'd go to the powerlifting gym. You know what I mean? I love powerlifting. But then I'd eat like an asshole at night because of the excuse of like, move big weight, get big, get big,
Yeah.
eat big. You know what I mean? Um, when I when Fuel Hunt was starting to come together, I started to really realize the fact that in order for me to create what I saw Fuel Hunt in my mind as and have the impact that I wanted, I needed to create a whole new person. I couldn't just do it with my mind. I had to kind of treat myself like an athlete because it was going to be grueling. I knew how hard it was going to be. Um, I had the birth of my first daughter, and then things started to turn around. Like I started to eat a little better, trim up a little bit. I started to get back into my endurance sports, drop a little weight. 2020 happened, the shit show that was all of that. And that was a big wake up call for me, for my health. I saw, my neighbors were like rejoicing in the fact that the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board started doing home delivery for alcohol so that during this lockdown or whatever you want to call it, they could now like just sit in their houses and drink. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck this, man. I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. And it started there. That year I lost, I went from like 215 to probably like 185. And then I did the Agogi battle ready. And then I cut down. That was last year. I cut down even more. And then that's when like I recomped my body, like I recompositioned my body. And jujitsu helped with that, obviously. Obviously. So I jumped around a little bit, but yeah, I just realized that like I needed to just not master my mind, but I needed to master, my body to have the meaning that I wanted to have in the world and the impact that I wanted to have. Jiu-jitsu was a byproduct of Fuel Hunt, honestly. I had always been interested in jiu-jitsu, but I never took the leap into it. And then, about a year into Fuel Hunt's apparel game, we started attracting some MMA fighters just because of the mindset and the
Yeah.
rules of the few. And one of them was Sean Brady. And he said to Drew, he's like, hey, when are you going to start making rash guards? And Drew and I, at the time we weren't practicing, we're like, the hell's that? The thing you wear to the beach? Like, we had no idea. Uh, and that's when I was like, look, like, if we're going to serve that part of our community, I need to practice. I need to start. And then that's what brought me into Martinez BJJ around the corner. Chris and Kyle Dawkins welcomed me to that team. And dude, I sound like, the typical new guy to jiu-jitsu, but it's changed my life in many, many, many ways, many ways. And aside from the growth of the community and the amazing people that I've gotten to meet, like you, and help, in a close second, jiu-jitsu is one of the things I'm very grateful Fuel Hunt has given me.
And what's crazy, I mean, honestly, like it takes a lot of humility, like for you to be successful, for you to have this level of success, especially with a brand like this, like Fuel Hunt. It is an aggressive brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to go into an area that no matter how aggressive you are,
Yeah.
and anybody that's never done jujitsu, if you don't know jujitsu, your first year, and this is what I tell people starting off, like your first year is just getting smashed. I mean, I don't even think there's 1% light. Like the first years you're getting smashed. And so for you to be able to be humble enough to step back and go, listen, like I'm leading this community. This is an aggressive community. I'm going to go put myself out here to just get smashed and for people to, oh, la, 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 la. Like, was that a hard leap for you to do?
No, I mean, to be honest, I looked at it as living the rules of the few. Like, who would I be if I didn't do that?
Yeah.
Like, if I went in there and tried to just highlight reel my way through, like my first year, get me at a good angle, take photos of me sweating. No, I went in there fully intending to get smashed. Fully. Dude, I fractured both of my orbitals in my skull. My left 1 year, my right the other. Fingers, toes. The name of the
Yeah.
game. At my school, there are no easy rounds, man. Dude. There are no easy rounds. There's no flow rolling. There's none of this shit. It is you get fucking smashed. And my first year, I got smashed. And I'm the type of guy that I'm an aggressive guy, which probably comes through in Fuel Hunt. So I'll tap. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not an idiot. I don't
Yeah.
want my arm broken, but I'm going to sit in it for a little bit. Like, I'm going to sit in the suffering just to make sure that my teammate knows who I am, what I'm about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that I earned my right to be here and everything that came before it. So I just looked at it as the my duty, really, like the right thing to do, to go in and get smashed. And boy, did I get smashed! There was no there were no easy days, man. No easy days. But I loved it, and I still do. I still do.
This all comes full circle. I know you're busy, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you making time for us. But based on everything you've said, based on the community building, I really do believe that for you, we've got to finish on this rule for you. And that rule is rule number 7. You are who you run with. How has that showed up in your life? And what do you say to people that are trying to change their crowd?
Yeah. So we have a rule with you, rule 11, you are who you hunt with. So we're in sync, man. We're in sync. What I say to people that are trying to change their crowd is that nowadays, again, on social media, there's a big push to cut people out of your life, right? It's always remove the toxic people, cut people out, ghost people. There's such a focus on removing people. And what I tell people to do, if you're trying to change your tribe, change your circle, don't do that. Focus on the right people. Don't worry about the wrong people. Let them fall away like dead wood, you know? Focus on the right people. And if you don't have someone in your circle that's the right person, that's living the life you aspire to live, come join Fuel Hunt. Or if you're listening to this, you got me now. Joey at fuelhunt.com, send me an email. What happens is when people try to change their circle, they're like, all right, well, now I got to go have this conversation with so-and-so that's this toxic person in my life. What is that? One conversation? No. It's never-ending conversations. They go and they say, hey, look, I'm changing myself and who I am. I can no longer associate with you. And then toxic person says, oh, what do you think? You're too good for me now? This, that, and the other. Remember when you were this person? Remember when you were that person? Now you're too good. And then the person comes back and says, well, I'm not this person. It's a cycle. It's a more toxicity, and it's a cycle that is very difficult to break. So what you do, day one, you start showing up different in the world or the person you want to give to the world, and you focus on the right people. Maybe it's a friend on social media, or maybe you have someone in your circle that you're already close with that you can spend more time with. Call them, spend more time. Let everybody else fall away like dead wood. That's what I tell people, because I see way too many people get caught up in that endless cycle of trying to cut people out of their lives. And it's like, look, sometimes it works. Most times it doesn't. Focus on the right people. Don't worry about the wrong people.
Amen. Hey, Joe, if people want to find you, where do they find you at?
Yeah. First and foremost, Fuel Hunt on Instagram. That's our public community, the largest gathering of our public community. Also at fuelhunt.com. And I'm at Joey Digital on Instagram as well.
Joey, I appreciate you taking this time, man. This has been a blast and a blessing for me. Looking to do more work with you down the road. Please start the hunting line for the love of God. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna put a quiz on this. Should Joey start a hunting blind? I'm gonna put that as one of the questions for people to answer in the group. Feel free to share that to every hunter you know and tell them, fuck yeah.
I love it. And we dove in today. You had so many kind words in the beginning of the episode. We just dove right in. I didn't even get a chance to thank you. So in many ways, I respect you and I'm grateful for you. We're adding another one to the list today that, you invited me to your show. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Grateful to have, found you and be connected with you. So thank you very much. And more work together in the future for sure.
Absolutely. All right, guys, remember, man, keep living your life head down, horns up. If you got something out of this, like, subscribe, share the episode, and by all means, tell Joey to start a hunting line. Until next time, guys, salute.